Hello, thank you very much for that, Jen. Thank you for everybody for coming along. I hope this is an enjoyable session for you. We're going to be talking about virtual tours and working with spherical media. Although the session, as Jen has said, is quite long, there's actually a lot of stuff that can be talked about with regard to that. But I'd really appreciate it if you took all the opportunities that arise to contribute your own experience or what you wanted to use this technology for, what you have used this technology for, that sort of thing. I did a podcast on Saturday with my wife, putting a story up there, and in doing that, I used Anchor, amongst other things, used Anchor. And that was a suggestion that came out of one of these sessions. So it's really good to hear what technology and so on you're using. I'm guessing that there may be quite a range of experience that you have working with 360 technologies. I mean, I think a couple of years ago, if we did a workshop on it, we'd expect that to be sort of all new for everybody. But I'm not sure that that's going to be the case now. So we'll find as we go along. It'll be really interesting to find out. So I'll just start my PowerPoint. That would probably be the best thing to do. And yeah, Jen didn't say that part of this involves me scrabbling around to get online and to get everything up. There we go. Share that. I'll share sound, but I won't optimize for video. Okay, there we go. So that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to talk about working with spherical media, and actually, this is a topic that is growing, and I think it's one that's going to continue. It's going to continue to grow. We are used to working in an environment where we are surrounded by everything. We can look up, down, left, right, all of around ourselves, and interact with that environment. That's the world that we kind of grow up in, and the digital world and art and lots of other things have, for our lifetimes anyway, worked with kind of frames. So there's a little frame, and you look at what's going on in that frame, and you're expelled from it. You're not part of it. You're removed from it, looking in from the outside. Now, actually, if we look back to like 1800s and so on, we see that at that time people became really quite into this idea of immersive technologies of experiencing, of doing kind of like virtual tours, albeit not in a digital domain, in the analog or in the physical domain. And this is a picture of London from Bankside, which went all the way around you, so you could look around from all different directions and get a natural perspective on the world. And the panorama was patented by a Scottish guy named Robert Baker in 1787, and they created these big places that you could go into, and you would stand on a viewing platform, and you'd be able to look around, and you'd be able to see the scene. This would be a way of kind of taking the sort of Victorian spirit of adventure and exploration, but bringing it back to the metropolis in a way that people could then experience that, and also experience things like the Boer War and events in history. And so this was kind of like a core way in which communication could take place in this period of time, in which you could experience what was happening around the world. And it became eclipsed by the movies, effectively, because with the movies, with this panorama, where you are in the center, where you're looking around, you're immersed in the environment, and all of those kind of things can be considered to be positive. But with the movies, you know, you could have a different movie every week in a movie theater, and with the panoramas, the big mechanical constructions, it would be you know, a few a year, and so that meant with the movies we were kind of expelled from the center of and removed from experiencing these other places and other times that were represented inside of panoramas. And I think what's happened in the last few years is the digital technologies that we work with, cameras, computers, phones, have been capable of, have become capable of handling spherical media. And what that has meant is a sort of resurgence of 360 technologies and ways of thinking about interpreting heritage and presenting heritage, where the people or the audience is at the center of and is surrounded by and can see things in quite a natural way, compared to other methods where you're not in the center of things and you're just seeing things through a square. But whereas in the 1850s and 1880s, that was you know, very expensive, involving a lot of physical resources that couldn't be changed often. Now we can do this on, you know, we can experience 360, an immersive 360 environment, by buying a piece of cardboard that costs £5 or £10 from Amazon and putting our mobile phone in it and holding it up to our heads. And you know, there are now hundreds of thousands of hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of virtual tours that we can experience in this way. And this is just an example from around me that you might want to go and look at, cineg.org, Cineg in Round Me, and it's just got a set of virtual tours. Some of these are like virtual time travel based upon digital reconstructions, but equally and often as excitedly, they can be virtual tours of places in the here and now that maybe it's difficult to get to or engage. And you know, really, I think this kind of like works really nicely with the whole doors open, you know, idea that we can use these 360 technologies to open the doors to heritage places that are normally closed to us, and we can do that relatively easily. And so this is another example, North US. So if I just go here, yeah, North US 360. So this was actually done a while ago, but it's kind of representing archaeological sites from their days, so we can go. You get the best from these by by using a 360, by using a headset, whether it be a standalone headset or whether it be one that you're using with your phone. But this shows a nice, you know, panoramic embedded in a web page. We can see all of the way around, so we can get a really nice view. And equally, we can then jump around, so we can use different portals to do that. And this is something that was photography was done by Dr. CJ Davis, who put together the 360s. But once you've got them, then you can really travel to a different place and to a different time. And this is on North US in the Western Isles, so it would take you a while to get there, but it was embedded in the local museums, so people could go to the local museum and get an idea of what was out there and then decide what they wanted to go and to see. So that's just one example of a 360 virtual tour, albeit from a few years ago. So, excuse me. And then this is another example of a virtual tour, which actually we made. It's not a virtual tour; it's kind of meta virtual tour. We made with the Scottish Civic Trust, and on here are links to virtual tours from all around Scotland. So this is from last year, and last year there was a student spent some time over the summer pulling together close to 150 virtual tours from different places in Scotland. So you can go to this map and have a look at them. And undoubtedly now it will need updating. There'll be a lot more. So this is something that is coming on, as you say. So that's really okay. So next, I just wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about what is a photosphere and how does the whole thing work. I don't want to be pedantic, but people talk about, and the common parlance is 360 this, 360 that, 360 tours, 360 videos, but none of them are really 360. Because 360 are degrees, so they exist in 2 dimensions. They're not a 3-dimensional thing. Spheres are 3-dimensional, so that's why we talk about photospheres when people normally talk about 360. But we can use those 2 things interchangeably. So what makes a photosphere? 1 is a spherical media. 2 is that, which is interesting, is that we only get a partial view at it at any point in time. The media, the aspect ratio of the media, and a projection. So this is just a piece of a 360 video, but it's actually coming up wrong. So sorry about that. But it shows an equirectangular. It's showing it in equirectangular projection. So spherical media exist in 3 dimensions. They provide an immersive experience, and we can see them statically as an image, or we can have a moving video. That's kind of the sort of fundamental aspects to it. There's a lot of talk about resolution. So if you're going to buy a 360 camera, it'll probably tell you, oh, this has got a 6K resolution, or a 4K resolution, or a 12K resolution, whatever. It'll tell you something about the resolution, and the number 6K applies to the number of pixels going from left to right in the image. Okay, but when we're looking at a 360 image, we don't see the whole thing at any point in time. So although it may be a 6K image, we're probably, for 6K, we're probably, as it says here, got 1.5K of vision, which is slightly less than HD, which is slightly less than HD. And if we wanted to have 4K in terms of what we can see, then the image itself would need to be 16K, 16,000. Why is that important? For 2 reasons. One, it means that although, like, somebody says to you, oh, I've got an HD camera to do 360 stuff with, isn't that fantastic? No, it's not. You really need to be up around 4, 5, and 6K, 5 and 6K equipment in order to be able to take photographs that are going to leave a good impression on the viewer. And even and when you're doing that, even with the 6K, the resolution they're getting is less than your HD television resolution, which actually is all right, but nonetheless be aware that it's so that's the first thing. And the second thing is that this should give us heart, because as time goes on, these devices are going to become higher and higher resolution at the same price. And so, you know, in the next 3 to 4 years or 4 to 5 years, we're going to get really high resolution 360 spherical media that enables us not just to see stuff at high resolution, but also to be able to zoom in, you know, like they do in Blade Runner, when they're kind of looking around corners in the mirror to find a snake skin, whatever it was. Anyway, so then you'll be able to do zoom into 360 and zoom out and stuff like that. So you'll effectively be able to explore a space a lot more. And so this means that the technology for doing spherical media, images and videos, you know, hasn't reached a saturation point. It's going to continue to get better, which is going to make the whole field become more and more attractive over certainly the next 5 to 10 years, I would suggest. So that's the first thing. The aspect ratio that media works with, usually we work with 4:3. An HD screen is 16:9, mod are 29. 360 video is an equirectangular ratio of 2:1. So when you have a 360 image, right, when it's projected onto a flat surface, the ratio is 2 across and 1 down, which is the same ratio as we have for HD. Monitors and 4K monitors and the like. So it's 2:1 is the ratio that we're working with. And the thing to understand here is that, you know, when we're working with the world, when we're working, which is spherical, when we want to create a map, we take that spherical image and we project it onto a flat surface. Okay, and so the way in which 360 works, that similarly with 360, is that it's stored as a projection on a flat image. Okay, which means that, you know, all of the different formats that we use, PNG, JPEG, we could just use those to put spherical media into. Okay, and then it's the software. The software needs to know this is an equirectangular projection in order to be able to show you it as a spherical thing that you can work with as a spherical media. Otherwise, it will show you it as a flat image, which nonetheless actually maybe have some value and may look good. So this is the thing that we were looking at before, where we were spinning round and looking round. This is it as an equirectangular projection. And of course, the fact that this is normal it's a normal formats like PNG, JPEG, the flat images, means that we can work on these images, spherical images, you know, in things like Photoshop, in image manipulation programs, even if we haven't got the 360 stuff sorted out. So if we want to make it lighter, or if we want to make it darker, boost the colors, do these things, we can work with 360 images in normal software. We have to take some guard. We have to just be cognizant of a few things, but that is very useful at all. And so this is us seeing it. Okay, so spherical video is something that is coming on tremendously. One of the things that has made a big difference with spherical video is stabilization. So increasingly the video software embedded in 360 cameras does good stabilization, which means that we can make 360 images, 360 video, and that's great for getting a bit of motion, clouds moving, the sea moving, seeing a river moving, all of those sorts of things are great, and also for capturing people walking past events and all of those sorts of things. So spherical video is increasingly available on cameras at resolutions that make it worthwhile doing. Okay, and then 3D spherical media. This just means that you would have two images, one for the left eye, one for the right eye, which gives a better view of space and spatial things. And again, you need to have a special camera for that, but maybe something that would enhance what you're doing. So what I've tried to do there is just to kind of like give a little bit of, hey, this is what spherical media is about. Working with spherical media is about. Here's some examples, and here's a little bit about the sort of technology that's involved in it. And I think what we want to do with the rest of this is to just go through what makes up a virtual tour, how do you make a virtual tour, the different ways of going about doing it, and how can you share a virtual tour. So those sorts of things. So that becomes like a bit more sort of practical. But I think the thing is that, you know, none of this is mystical. All of it is stuff that you can pick up really quickly, and you can make a 360 tour with the equipment that you already have. Okay, so there's no need necessarily to go out and buy anything. There may be some good reasons to buy things, but you can do this. And so I think it would be great if Jenny, you were going to do a little bit of an intro on the breakout session.
Yes, so we thought there would be a nice chance to discuss with one another. Have you any experience looking at virtual tours? You know, can you think of examples that you can share with a smaller group, but then also with the larger group? So we've got the chat. You can pop links into that, but we'll give you 10 minutes to stop and discuss that and think about if you have maybe a good example, if it was something you really enjoyed, if there are ones that maybe you didn't like. Do you have experience in making your own? Because there are going to be some people here that actually have already done some of this, and you can maybe ask some questions in the smaller groups about how that worked for you. And I think, again, with these workshops in the back of your mind, think about, is there a virtual tour that you are wanting to create, whether it's for Doors Open Days 2021, or if it's just something you want to do for your property or your business and whatever it is that you're working on, and have a wee chat about that. So what I will do is just create some breakout rooms, and I desperately hope that we have themed rooms. Like last time we had a session, it seemed to put all of the Neils in one room, and they got up to all sorts of things. But we'll see how Zoom breaks you out this time. Okay, is everybody ready? I'm going to open the rooms. So let's just take about 10 minutes till about 1:42, and then I'll send you the wee warning to come back into the discussion. If anybody from the smaller group is happy to share anything that you talked about in the smaller groups, that would be great. And feel free to share links in the chat when you come back. Sorry, I forgot to restart the recording there. So you were saying Matterport, am I getting that correct?
Matterport.
Matterport and Sketchfab. I'll add those to the resource list. If there's anything that you want to flag up throughout the session, I add these things to the resources. Excellent, thank you very much.
Also, if people can maybe begin very simply, you know, if people say have good quality still images, maybe even photographs, maybe even PowerPoint presentations. Is it possible to adapt them, reuse them in a virtual tour, and think about new filming further down the line?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when we were doing the video session, and if anybody is interested in recordings of past sessions, if this is the only one you're dipping into, don't hesitate to get in touch. I can link back to those. Doing videos through PowerPoint by recording a PowerPoint presentation, as Mary just mentioned, that's maybe a good idea. And I think, as Alan said, you don't need a lot of really fancy, expensive kit to do an interesting virtual tour. So think about the resources you already have if you don't have a budget to do these things. We did a virtual tour workshop in, I think it was 2019 in Paisley, and that was the first sort of digital skills workshop we practiced with. It was in partnership with Shop Mobility. And one of the things we did then was just use our phones. So we all went over to Paisley Abbey and just practiced just with mobile phones. So nothing fancy at all. And we were all really surprised with what we could get out of that. So I know that's something Alan will talk about more about later on. But yeah, so think about what maybe resources you already have. Yeah, and there's some links in the chat as well. And again, I will send out a chat transcript, but if you want to be exploring these links throughout the day while we talk, please feel free to do that. So there's suggestions for Panorama Stitcher. So if you're taking the photos and you want to stitch them all together into a wider shot. And some good examples that people like. Kira, you're saying the Royal Parks was a really good one where you're using actual live footage, but marrying that with archival footage. So if you've got historical images of a property or whatever it is that wherever you're based, that's a nice way to put it. That's a good example of the way somebody has used that. And there's some 3D models that you can use to then put into a virtual tour. So thank you very much for all of your suggestions and sharing.
Yes, that's great. That's great. I'm just wondering if I should push on with the PowerPoint.
If nobody has any burning desire to give a last minute comment before we hand it back to Alan.
Right. Right, great. Sorry, it's getting a bit messed up with my, sorry, share screen. Hi everybody. So what I wanted to just talk about a little bit was the what goes to make up a virtual tour. What do we put in the what's the process all about? And way of doing that is to just kind of look at what the different components are. So if we're designing or wanting to put together a virtual tour, and I think that at this level, it does apply as much to photographs as flat photographs as to a tour made up of flat photographs, perhaps embedded in a map or perhaps as part of a video. So we want to ask, like who is the tour aimed at? Actually, that's exactly the same as if it was going to be a physical tour. And what do you want to communicate? What you're trying to get over as part of the tour? Just think about how long should the tour take to complete? Like, is it going to be 10 minutes? Is it half an hour? Is it 2 hours? And is there a call to action? So, like, are you wanting to, once they've done this tour, are you wanting them to do something? Like, are you trying to entice them to come to your place, or are you trying to get them to make a donation to you, or are you just wanting them to share the tour with other people so maybe they can be involved with it? And I think this is one of the things that, in the last year, a lot of us have started to do digital things that perhaps we hadn't done before. And one of the sort of nice things about that process is that the sort of knowledge that we have already about showing somebody around a building or showing somebody around a location, in this case, is transferable over into doing a virtual tour. So I think that 90% of what it takes to do a virtual tour is probably knowledge and skills that you already have in the physical domain. So it's not a huge deal in order to be able to put a good one of these things together. So then if we're actually going to make the tour, it's kind of like 5 steps. So you need to decide upon where what are the spots, what are the places that we're going to use a set of locations, okay? And then for each location, is what are we wanting to communicate? What hotspots or interactives might we want to have? So we decided we want to have a 360, at the entrance to a park or at the entry door to the museum. Okay, so that's one place. But when people are at that place, are there details that we want to highlight? Okay, so we could have a photograph, a normal photograph that you kind of embed into the place that you click and it pulls it up, or some audio or some text. Okay, but so what hotspots and interactives? And again, that's very similar to when we were talking about doing photographs, having photographs of buildings, but having details within those buildings that we wanted to pull out. Look at what equipment and software, and there's an increasingly wide range of stuff, but I can talk about what I've had. Obviously, I don't spend my whole life testing equipment and software, so I haven't tried everything, but there are some sort of leaders that have important qualities that it can kind of like point you at. What's the process for taking a photograph, and how do we process those photographs, and then how do we assemble it? So scene selection, when we're selecting what places we want to take our 360 images or our videos from, what do we need to consider? Well, first of all, think in 3 dimensions. Okay, so if you're a photographer, you'll think about framing an area and what the direction is, and composition and all of those sort of things. With 360, that kind of goes out the window a bit, because all you can do is decide what place you're going to take this photograph at. You can also decide the height, and by the way, the height should probably be about eye height, just for kind of like realism, or there'll be exceptions about it. So think in 3 dimensions. So it's good to have things that there's stuff happening above, there's stuff happening below, stuff happening left to right, taking advantage of the fact you're working in this 360 media. But maybe not. Maybe you just want this place and it has got a specific thing that is the subject for that place, and then everything else is background. That can be fine too. But if that is the case, if you have a clear subject, do have the camera near to the subject. Don't feel as though you have to have your camera in the middle of the room, equidistant from everything that is happening around it. If there's something that is more important, then highlight it, bring the camera close to it, and then it will be more visible to the person who's looking at it. Because remember, at any one point in time, people are only going to be looking at a proportion of your photograph. And you can set things up so that you can decide what is the thing that they're going to be looking at when the photograph loads. Okay, so that's your that's your subject. So think about subject and context. And then lighting is important. You know, if you're pointing a camera in a direction to take a photograph, you've got quite a lot of control over the lighting. I mean, you can light the subject using lights. With the 360, less so. You've got less control. You can't choose a particular area. It's more difficult to light because the lights are in the, because it's 360, the lights are in the shot. You probably don't want that to be happening. So you've got to make use of natural light for that. And this means that often there will be parts of the photograph that are very dark and parts that are very light. So often you'll want to use a high dynamic range, which means taking multiple photographs and merging them together. I mean, particularly the case, like if you're in a building with windows, often the windows will be really, really bright and the internals will be dark. Okay, so I mean, a 360 camera or other cameras, you can set the lightness settings, and we would do that as part of the process, right? But there's you can't really compensate for this high range of light, so you need to be aware of that and probably take multiple photographs at different settings. And then we want to avoid reflective surfaces where possible, glass cabinets, mirrors, all of these sort of things don't really help us. So that's the first thing. We need to think about a scene. Now, I haven't mentioned it, but the most obvious and most important thing is you want places that, you know, fit with your story, that have something to say, that are emblematic of the place that you're talking about. So the heritage, the history, the significance of the place is the most important thing. And then these factors follow on, the technical factors follow on behind that, which means that you don't need a big training in order to know, oh, okay, here are the half dozen places I want as part of my virtual tour, right? You'll if you know a place of heritage, you will know yourself what those are. Okay, you won't learn that here. So the narrative hotspots and interactions. So once we've got a photograph, 360 photograph, we want to give it a title and a name, maybe more description and metadata associated with it, but certainly a title and a name as a first thing. And then consider about audio commentary. So when you go into the place, you get, so it says, hello, welcome to the gateway to the museum. At this point, this is interesting thing. Think about visual hotspots, you know, if there's a piece of architecture or art or something like that, we can put those into it, add audio hotspots. So that's really straightforward, isn't it? I mean, we can think about all of those things and plan out a tour. I think, you know, it'd be a good thing to do a sort of mental exercise. If you've not already made one, think of a place and think that you want to make it, that it would be possible to make a tour out, and decide on, oh, this is a hotspot, that's a hotspot. Sorry, these are the places, these are the hotspots, these are the commentary, all of those sort of things. And somebody mentioned using PowerPoint. You could absolutely plan this out in PowerPoint, and you could prefigure it absolutely with snapshots for each of the places before making the 360 images. You know, so you can get a long way with your camera, sorry, with your phone and with your PowerPoint in designing a virtual tour. But then how to make it? So I don't know. Just you can get Google Street View for your phone, Android or iOS. And if you've not got it on, I would strongly recommend just going and installing it. You could actually do that now. I mean, it would be great if by the end of this session everybody had made you know, kind of like one photosphere. That would be a great thing to do. So if you haven't got it, then why not go to Google Play or iTunes and search for Google Street View and install the app. I mean, a lot of phones might come with it already already on. So I think that would be a great thing for you all to do. So that's one way. So I said before, there's like three, sorry, in the small group discussion, there's 3 ways that we can make a piece of spherical media. So the first is with our mobile phone, following the instructions that you get in Google Street View. Okay, we'll create a 360 images. The second is to have a specific 360 camera, which is a good way to progress. You get reliable images. You can get them quickly. And it's also you get flexibility. So you can get 360 videos. And you can even get a special case to do underwater things. And you can use your 360 camera to do kind of like stunt action movie type things. So that's a fun way to do it. Now, 360 cameras vary a lot in price, from like 100 up to 60,000. So my strong advice would be to avoid both of those extremes. You can get a good 360 camera that will work well for you, that will do HDR, let you do underwater and do good video stuff for around £400. I probably wouldn't recommend paying less than that. And you can then, you know, go up to 5,000, 15,000 for higher resolution things, which may be worthwhile if you think you're going to be doing this a lot. But if it's like for a week in a year, then maybe not. You can also, there's also ways of hiring equipment. So it's not a huge amount of technical skill. So you could think about hiring if you wanted to go for the higher resolution things. And then the third way is you can use a camera, the clicker, tripod, and panoramic head. Camera, clicker, tripod. So you have a camera, you stick the camera onto, you stick a panoramic head onto a camera, or sorry, onto a tripod. You stick the camera onto that, and that helps you take the photograph. Okay. Now, at the end of the day, so with taking a 360 image, whether it be using your mobile phone or using a camera and a panoramic head, you need to take multiple photographs. And you need to take enough multiple photographs that they overlap with each other. And you want to make sure that the lens stays in the same place. So, you know, when you do a panorama, you start off on the left and you skim round like that. You don't want to do that. You want to keep the camera there and you rotate around it. Okay, so you keep it in one place. And that's what the panoramic head does. It keeps the entry to the lens in the same place. When I mean panoramic left, right, and up, down in three dimensions, not just going that way with respect to the camera. So yeah, so the mobile phone has the advantage of you take multiple photographs, so you can get really quite high resolution. But it may be difficult inside. You're better off probably starting off outside because things that are a long way away, you don't have to be quite so accurate in terms of the positioning of the lens. A 360 camera isn't going to get you super resolution, okay, and it costs a bit, but it's going to get you reliability and flexibility. And so I think it's a really good thing to have. A camera with, so if you're wanting really top quality, I hesitate to say professional, but if you're wanting things that are really high resolution and zoomable, then the camera, the tripod, and the special head are the way to go. Okay, so that's 3 ways of making it, and it's 3 types of equipment. Google Street View will help you with the mobile phone. Hugin is a free panoramic stitching software, and it's available on all platforms. So it's available on Windows, it's available on Mac OS, it's available on Linux, and it's pretty well established. We've been around for a long time, so there's a community around it. It's not going to kind of like disappear, or it's not going to go, oh well, you know, you've been using our free version, and you know what, we're going to kind of like take away some of the functionality from your free version, and if you want to keep hold of that, you're going to have to pay us some more money and stuff like that. No, it's been around for a long time. It's reliable. RoundMe for stitching stuff. RoundMe is good as a platform for uploading to and making virtual tours on. Also good for that is something called Cooler. Okay, and then Cupido, excuse me, is a virtual museum thing that we've been working with from St Andrews, which can archive your spherical media and help you with creating galleries of spherical media. So here's Hugin. So it's a panorama photo stitcher. So shooting a photosphere. As I said, there's 3 ways of shooting a photosphere. Here's some examples of cameras. So on the far left, we have a Ricoh 5, and then an Insta360X. You can now get an Insta360X2, and then an Insta360 Pro 2, and then Ian, I've forgotten the name of the Bluefish, an underwater 360 camera on the far right. Costs, so that's about like £400 for the Ricoh, £400 for the 360X2, £5,000 for the Pro 2, it's 360 Pro 2, and I think it was £11,000 for the underwater camera, and all of those are capable of doing nice photographs. 5-6K for the Ricoh and the 360X, 8K for the Pro 2, and similarly for the 8K video for the Pro 2. I think you can get 11K images out of it, and similarly for the underwater camera. And the Pro 2, the one in the middle that looks like it should have been part of the War of the Worlds, can also do 3D stereoscopic images and video. And the 2 to the left can also, you can get cases, that means that you can do underwater footage with them. So the Ricoh and the Theta, they have mobile apps associated with them. So what you need to do is to download the mobile app onto your phone, and then if you pair the mobile app with your phone, and then you can take your photographs using your phone or tablet to do the click on it. Also, you can get a preview of the image on the phone, click on it, and you can also do the settings that you want. So you can set the exposure time, you can set the sensitivity, and you can set the aperture. They've got kind of like standard automatic settings as well, but you may well need to move from that. The main thing, or the most obvious thing to adjust, is the EV value, which kind of like it's how light or how dark you're planning on it being. So if there is in the image, you know, an area of lightness which isn't what you're particularly interested in, then you'll want to make your setup less sensitive to more sensitive to light than the average, so that the darker areas get highlighted and we get the detail in the darker areas. So quite often you'll want to play with these settings, but the settings are, I say quite often, but most of the time the default settings are fine. So only mess with them if the results you're getting out are too dark, and you can see preview, so you should get an idea from that. Okay. And like I said, optional HDR, if there's a lot of high contrast, do explore the HDR settings. And this is an example of us doing a virtual tour with some school students in the boat shed in Unst in Shetland, using a Google Street View app. And for this, keep the phone in the same location, keep the phone at the same height, rotate and tilt around the lens, follow lens glide points, shoot down, center up, then rotate round. Okay, and then we can see, I think we can see a wee virtual tour made this way. So this is on round me. We can so we can start the tour. We can see Unst, Boathaven. Yeah, and putting together something like this isn't too difficult, and it can be a nice thing to have for around doors open day and the like. As I said, Round Me is a free piece of software. It has lots of ways in which you can pay, but you can do a decent job without having to pay anything. So that's good. And also, I think on Google Maps. So yeah, this is on Google Maps. So you could, if you go to Google Maps, you go to Unst, Boathaven, you should be able to find this photos here, which means that even when the place is shut, people can have a look inside for it, which is quite nice. This is how what it works with the mobile phone and with the tablet. Is you get to a screen, so and you're given these guidelines. So you get this, a dot arrives and you've got a sort of orange circle, and you've got to line those two up. Once they're lined up, you can move on to the next one, and provided you keep the phone in the same place and the lens in the same place, and you go round and round and round, you'll come out with a pretty decent photosphere. If you want to go really high resolution, then use a panoramic tripod head. There's an example of one. It's Manfrotto. That probably costs about £400. Okay, so you need to configure the camera using manual settings. So try and make sure you've got the lightness settings so that they'll work all the way around. Each photograph needs to have the same settings. So you can't really use automatic, unlike with the 360 camera. You can't really use automatic because you're taking multiple photographs. So you want to set up manual settings so that it stays the same throughout. Okay, then you make sure the setup is, and then you just go around, click, 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 go around, taking photographs, and then point it up a bit and point it down a bit and go around again. Often you need to use HDR, so you take multiple photographs at each click. And then you've got a whole set of photographs. Once you've got those photographs, you can upload them into Huggin. If you're using Google Street View, it will process your photographs automatically. And so you don't need to do this, but you can get the actual photographs back out again, in which case you could put them into something like Huggin. And I don't want to go into the lots of detail about how this works, but you collect together your images, check your camera properties and put them into the system, and then you have sets of control points, which are essentially points that appear in more than one camera, more than one photograph. So you're helping the system know how the photographs relate to each other. Okay, and then you run an optimizer, which will generate a projection and then run the stitcher. Okay, so there are specific help me's and redos for that you can kind of go through. And this is the St. James Library at the University of St. Andrews, a wonderful place. And this is an equirectangular projection of it, being stitched together from multiple different photographs. So comparing these three methods, mobile app is great. You don't need to buy anything. You can just do it yourselves. Can be a little bit time consuming. It improves with practice. Some people are better at it than others. 360 camera, you're off and running. Don't spend weeks shooting photographs and then take them all out and start processing. No, take a couple of photographs, spend an hour or a morning taking photographs, take them out, and then go through the other stages of the process. Because otherwise you might find you spent 2 weeks doing it with a setting, which means that everything comes out black and nothing happens. Okay, so definitely, take some, do some stuff with it, look at them, and then do some more, and do this kind of iterative process, so that if you're making a mistake early on, it's not catastrophic for the whole process. A camera potentially gives you the highest quality and resolution possible, but there is a learning curve with that. You're going to need to learn how to do that. You need to be patient, and an investment of time. So if you want to become an expert in doing this stuff, then that's certainly a good bow to have. No, what is it? A good something with your bow, a good string. It's another string to your bow. Yeah, that's it. Another string to your bow. It's great, but the easiest way is with the 360 camera. So once you've got your 360 image, okay, you can go about uploading it. So here I would suggest, certainly for starting and possibly forever, Roundme is a good platform to use for this. It's free. They limit you to about 15, I think it's 15 a week uploads or something like that. And if you want to get rid of Roundme branding and stuff like that, you have to get a pro account and the like. But you can do hotspots, you can do audio, and you can make a virtual tour. And once you've made a virtual tour, you can share it and embed it. So you need your 360 media. But first of all, you need an account. So go to roundme.com. At this point in time, I should make clear that I'm not I'm not getting any benefits from Roundme or Kula or anybody else to say these things. So it can be a little bit flaky. It's got a little bit more flaky in time, and also, so this was really the clear front runner a year or 2 years ago, but there's been a bit of a boom. There's been a bit of a boom in this area, and so there are other platforms that are worthwhile looking at. Somebody mentioned Matterport. Matterport is good, and it's got if you want to get their high-end cameras and tie them in, so the high-end cameras are going to cost about a few grand, and tie them into the system. that unlocks some of the extra value that Matterport has. So you can use that. That's for sure, Matterport. But anyway, Brown Me, Cooler was the other one. So Round Me, just sign up. You can use Facebook, you can use Twitter, you can use Google. You can have one account per email. So you can have multiple accounts if you want multiple accounts. You can have a personal one for messing about in and stuff like that. And so once you've signed up, you get this thing which says virtual tours made simple, create tour. So that's what you do. You click on create tour and you get this thing here, drag and drop. So you take your 360 images and you drag and drop them onto this, and then it will just take a bit of time. And they will make 360. You'll have the makings of a virtual tour. I say it's a bit flaky. Sometimes the process just doesn't end. It just goes on and on and on and on, and it doesn't tell you that it's finished. But if you, like, after a reasonable amount of time, just go away and have a cup of tea or something like that, and come back in half an hour. If you then kind of come out around me, come back in, you'll probably find that the tour is there and has been processed for you. Okay, so yeah, and so then once you've got your tour, you can fill in some details. So give it a title, give it a description, give it some keywords, and you see there's some information about the camera. That will be embedded. The information about the camera will be embedded in your photospheres. Okay, so that's great. If the system doesn't recognize them at all, then you've got a metadata issue. Okay, so there needs to be metadata in the image which the system recognizes it as a 360 image. That's true for Google Street Maps as well when you're uploading to Google Street Maps. Now, if you're doing it from Street View or you're doing it from the cameras that we talked about, that shouldn't be a problem at all. It's only going to be a problem if you're doing this sort of advanced generation of images and stitching them together and doing all of that sort of stuff. So you could drop us an email, or you can Google correct metadata for Round Me or something like that, and you'll get a set of instructions on how to cope with that. So that's just flagging that up as a potential problem. And this is Nearance. This is Bobby's bus shelter, where we went and visited it. And so you see, the first thing that I've done here is given each of the photospheres a title: on the road, looking out, inside view. Really simple, really straightforward, but giving it a title changes it from a series of images that nobody really knows anything about into a virtual tour. That I think is the most important thing, is to give something a name that people can see and draw connections from. When you click on it, there's a bunch of different options that are there. The top left, which is a sort of snapshot one. If you set this photosphere to be pointing in the direction that you want it to be pointing when somebody first sees it, and then click the snapshot thing, that's what they'll see. Every time that they come along, they'll see it orientated the way that you want it to be orientated. So you get to choose what people see first, which is really what you want to do. It's really the way to do it. The second thing that we can do is we can make portals. Okay, so we just, in our editing mode, so something like that later on, but we just click on the I'm on looking out, and I want to make a portal to on the road. So that will just take me to the on the road photosphere. So I just click on the road and drag it over here, and that will create the portal thing, and we'll get this coming up. And so we can set custom view direction and that sort of stuff, and then save portal. And then we've made a bunch of portals. So the next thing we can do, well, we did a whole thing on sound, right? But we can use sounds. We can add sounds into the photospheres very nicely. And there can be directional sounds So this is me, taking the sound from Preview, putting it into Audacity, and then clicking on the sound. I think I've got this in the wrong place. Oh, let's move that over.
Alan, can I ask a question while you're talking about all
Yeah,
this
please do.
you're doing? There was a question in the chat about, are there any top tips for making virtual tours accessible? So is this something, do you need to think about accessibility when you're taking the photos, or is this something that you can build in the editing process? You know, can you add captioning, for example, or you're talking about sounds? Is there anything that you have experience with to improve accessibility for virtual tours?
So with respect to the, I suppose that when I think about virtual tours, I do think about them as being quite a pretty accessible technology in the sense that, you know, you can put them onto Facebook so that people just click on them and it takes them into the tour. You can embed into a web page, and similarly, you just click on it, it takes you there. And a lot of the time we work with kind of like 3D modeling technologies or other things like that, which sometimes you need high-powered computers to deal with, but with these you can get them directly onto your phone, directly onto your computer, and there's really almost certainly not going to be an issue with the quality of the hardware or with those sorts of things. So from those sorts of accessibility issues, I think it's a winner. There isn't really much support in here. Well, there isn't much support in here for multilingual, but there's nothing to stop you, adding that in, or I don't know how you do. I mean, one option would be to make multiple tours with in the specific languages that you want to be covered, which might sound like a bind, but it's not really, because you'll be reusing the photographs and reusing the hotspots and all of that sort of thing. So you could set everything up with regard to the hotspots, the photographs, the visuals and all of that, and then just make copies of it and do the language specific stuff that way. And then I suppose the other thing is that there's this sound capability. So if people have difficulty with reading, then you can get them, you can get audio to them, and it would be possible. You can have audio that is, there is audio that is specific to, that will play when you go into a particular photosphere. So if you wanted to set it up as sort of audio description, so that when you come into a photosphere, what you're getting is the text, which an audio description of that if you kind of got visual impairments. But so I think that there's things that can be done with that, even if there's not a huge amount of specific support. Does that, do you want to come back on that, whoever asked that question?
Thank you. That was good. I think that was sorry, that question was there for a while. No, I think that's really interesting. I like the idea of maybe doing some audio description and having that just play when you visit certain areas. I think that's a nice feature.
Yeah. And the other way of doing audio is this, which is that, so there's a little audio icon that you drag over and you drop, and then you get this, and you upload a piece of audio to it, and then you see this reach 30 degrees. So you can set that to wide or narrow, and what it means is that if you're looking at it, you hear it. If you're not looking at it, you don't hear it. So you can make it wide, or so it's aware of what your orientation is, and can change the audio with respect to that, and you can put it on loop or not have it on loop. So with this one, it's actually the sound of a bus. So you hear a bus sound coming, which gives a nice sort of boost to it all. And then you've got info. So here you've got information points, you've got portals, so you can jump around, and you've got audio. They're the main ways in which you can put it together. But also there's a map, and so you can see where you are on the map, and you can navigate like that. Bobby's Bus Shelter virtual tour. Okay, and then looking at this menu on the right hand side here, there's also, you can play around with projections and auto rotations and slideshows and things like that. So the slideshow thing might be something to use if you were worried about accessibility. And remember, the other thing that you can do, and we'll be doing more on this in the live section, but we touched on it in the video, is that you can capture the screen and capture the audio. And so you can go through this virtual tour in the way that you want to go through it. You can record that whole thing, turn it into a video, upload it to YouTube, and then people can play it. And then the only thing that people need to do then is to click on it, and it will play through. And if you've got this auto rotation thing on, well, so you can, and that's nice, because that then puts you, the composer, in control of what people are seeing. Whereas this way, people can click on what they want, and that's great. It's great to have that interactivity, and it's great to put the user in control. But you don't necessarily know they're going to make the decisions that you want them to make, or see the things that you want to see in the order that you want to see them. Whereas if you make a video from it, then you can get that. And it's probably, you know, if you've made a virtual tour, it's probably a good idea. It's probably a good idea to do it both ways, to use it both ways. You know, in order to get that, and that again would improve the accessibility. So we've got that, and one of the menu items there was share and embed. So we can share this to Facebook, we can do it to Twitter, or we can get this embed here, iframe with 643, which we can then embed that into a web page. So you go to your web page, you click on it, and it takes you direct to this. And that's really is often, you know, a nice feature to have on the front page of a museum or something like that, you know, as well as all of the normal blurb. Give people an interactive 360 to tour to play around with. Just embed it in your web page, and you're off. So that's good. Oh, and that clipboard there gives you a URL which you can put into an email or however else you want to share your URL. So it's great. Once you've got things in here, I mean, people do come and look at it. I mean, I think we got something like, on this account, something like 10,000 views. Is this the 10 or 20,000 views over a couple of years, which isn't huge. But if you kind of like push it out onto Facebook and web pages and things like that, that's when you get people coming to see it. So it's something that the platform itself isn't a huge sell to people, but it gets your media into a state where you can put it to places where it's going to get seen and where it's going to get noticed. Putting things onto Google Street Maps, on the other hand, will get you a large number of views. The same account, I think, for this has something like 1 million views. So that just kind of gives you an idea. But you don't have as much control over the quality if it's on Google Maps or over where it's seen. But anyway, so that's round me. How are we doing for time?
We're a little bit over where we would want to be for a break. Could you pause and we can?
Yeah, sure.
Rest? Is that all right?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. All right, everybody. Shall we take a 10-minute break? Everybody refresh your cups of tea, step away from the computer for a few minutes, and we'll reconvene about 1:45. Is that all right?
So yeah, thanks a lot for that. I had a good break, and we were talking about how to do virtual tours, how to make them. And there's this, I talked about maybe using a 360 camera together with RoundMe, or a phone together with Google Street View. But there's a cooler. Maybe somebody can correct me on the pronunciation, but Cooler is a good system that we've been playing around with. It does 360 virtual tours. It makes and it can have some powerful functionality, and it can enable you to share those and also to create web-based applications which feature the virtual tour. So all of those things are good, are great. The free version isn't as powerful as RoundMe. So, for example, you can't do pop-ups, and you can't do sound in the free version of Cooler, whereas you can do in RoundMe. However, for the paid version of Cooler, goes further in support for programming and building applications. So my advice would be, if you're wanting to spend, or if you're prepared to spend something like £20 a month on a platform to do 360, and you're wanting to explore different modes of interaction and the like, and kind of really get into it, then it's probably worthwhile signing up to Cooler. Whereas if you're wanting to do it for free, I would stick with RoundMe, because you get more in the free bundle, and you can always swap over as later. Although Cooler does let you upload 100 photospheres a month, which is a lot more than RoundMe does. But there you go. Okay, so it's kind of sort of comparison of the two. So you can sign up with Facebook, and it's pretty straightforward. Once you've signed up, you can drag or select an image to upload it. Once you've uploaded it, you've got some options. So image, text, and hotspot. You can see there, hotspots and audio can only be shared publicly once you've got the Cooler Pro license, which I must admit that inspired me to go and get the Cooler Pro license. So they don't tie you in for a year or anything like that, though. So you could spend your 20 quid and do some stuff, and then you know, make a decision about whether you want to stick with them or not. So there's some nice functionalities. You can create a thumbnail. You can put some different filters on it. You can embed an image. You can embed text, and you can embed a hotspot. So that's and this is oh yeah. So you can then have multiple. So with Perth and Kinross Heritage Trust, who I think are here, we made a model of Perth in 1440 and putting that onto Cooler, as it seems to be a nice platform for that. And Crub in Skye and St Andrews Castle, but we'll move a bunch more on. And as you can see, you can create a hotspot. So that's just creating a hotspot. How did that happen? For that. So this is then going into the Perth 1444 example. So here you've got like 11 photospheres based upon a reconstruction. So you can use virtual stuff as well as real stuff. And there's a nice little map feature, bottom left-hand side there. You click on the map feature, click, and up comes the maps, and you can see the photospheres distributed on the map. So you click on those, and that takes you to each of the photospheres below, and that's Google Maps. And again, there's this is our shoemaker who we've gone to, but we can click on the hotspots and get images, get interpretation, and we can embed 3D objects into this using a system that we've actually developed called, well, in IIIF. We haven't developed the IIIF system, but we have added to the viewer. So that lets us put in 3D objects that we can pull out of the environment, which is pretty cool, but I can't show you just now. But this shows an image of the research that went into creating the characters that are in the Perth 44, and this shows an example of using Cooler to create a web-based application. And I think I can just go. Oomph. Oh, I don't want to have lost it. There we go. So, yeah, this is us in the Perth reconstruction live. So we can zoom in, we can zoom out. So that's quite cool. And we can go to different ones. There's a gallery, so you can click on the gallery, get some interpretation up. And a nice image of Perth. See the Sheriff's Court. Maybe. Yeah. Which is where we are. Shoemaker. So we can see some interpretation about the shoemaker. And these bits of things can be video, they can be 360. So that's some kind of nice stuff that you can do in Cooler. And again, David was asking about sharing, so we can share the tour, so we can get a link. So we get a link here. Copy. So I can type and put the link in there. And now you can all click on that, put it in your emails and tell the world. Tell the world about it.
If you're looking for the one with the map in it as well, it's further along. It was just before you clicked on the.
To the left or the right?
Right. That one, I think.
Okay, so this is a nice little.
Yeah.
So this is a nice little web application built from Cooler. So there's a map. We can click on that, and that takes us to here. Let's see around. We can. And of course, this is a web page, right? So we can have any text or surrounding images or narrative. It can just slot in with whatever web page you've got for your organization. And these are just going to photospheres, but they could go to other actions. And then there's a list here. It's kind of like put things into the player. Okay, so that's the main stuff about how to go about making a tour. In terms of how to share a tour, we've talked about Cooler and RoundMe. Actually, Google is a great platform for uploading spherical media to. I say Google, I mean Google Street View. So the Google Street View app, as well as being able to enable you to to create 360 stuff, it also enables you to upload it to Google Street View, and that's a place where you can get a lot of coverage. We'll share these slides. This is an example of a tour in St Andrews Preservation Trust. This kind of illustrates the points. This is us sharing that tour into Facebook from RoundMe. And this is Google Street View showing the St Andrews Preservation Trust Museum and some of the 360s. And here are a set of 360s that are on Google Street View. So, you know, millions of people or billions of people use Street View every day. So kind of getting the media close to where people are and what people are looking at is a good strategy for getting large numbers of hits. Okay, and then the other thing that we would do or we'd recommend is in some way archiving. So you make these media and you upload them to Cooler, you upload them to RoundMe, you put them onto Google Street View, put them all of these places. Don't trust any of them. I mean, I'm not saying that to be nasty about it, but don't trust any of them. Google, they'll happily delete, remove, not use stuff that you upload to them. I mean, they will use it as well, but I mean, you've got no guarantee, and you won't get it back, from them. So you want to keep a copy. RoundMe, who knows? You know, it may go bust next year. Same with Cooler. Putting stuff in those places, they are not safe. They're good for getting them to people, but they are not safe. So you want to archive these media so that you can make use of new platforms when they come up, and so that you have them. So keep them on a hard drive, or you can we have a system. You can upload them to our system, and we'll archive them there for you and help you connect them to these places. But still, don't trust us either, because you know we may go bust and not be here in 3 years' time. Keep a copy yourself to keep things safe. But you know, do however create an archive, and it would be great if you were to use our stuff. I mean, we would really love to get a bunch of photospheres from everybody here, or to get a photograph from a photosphere from everybody here, to make a map, to make a virtual tour for Digital Doors Open, not a virtual tour for each site, but a virtual tour with a little bit of each site in it. So that would be really fantastic. If anybody wanted to send us, you know, please, you know, take your camera, take your phone or your camera, go to your garden or your building, create a photosphere and email it to Jen, and then we'll put it into a map, and we'll make a map for Digital Doors Open with virtual tours in it. And there's some clues as to how you might be able to do that. Okay, but I think that I know that we finish at 3:30. So oh, and this is the map that we've made last summer. So we want to extend this and improve it. And this is just showing Tom and Tool Museum and the sort of things that are there. Where the resources. So that's the end of the slides. I think that it would be great if there are any more questions floating around, or
Yeah, so
there's some suggestions.
we have the luxury today of not running all the way up to the wire. So if anybody actually wants to revisit something or ask more detailed questions about anything that Alan went over, any of these specific platforms, or again, if you want to share your experiences, because I think so far these different workshops that we've done, there's been a lot of peer learning that's actually been very valuable. People just saying what it is that they've done or tried and what has or has not worked. So if you want to share any of that now, please do. I will continue to look through the chat and see if you've added anything.
Yeah, I feel you can blurt out as well. I mean, not blurt out. I mean, you can. This is the.
So Julie is asking, does anyone know of a good photo or video platform to archive? So used to have Flickr, but would be good to know if anybody else uses anything that's good and secure and useful.
I think Flickr's a good place, but you need to keep a copy yourself, or upload a copy to us. But we're just that we're securing ourselves. But I really think that any online system like Flickr or it has the potential. Well, there's two things about it. One is that they take rights to what you've got, and the other is that they're not. There's no guarantee that they're going to be in one place. So I think it's a good idea to archive locally. But maybe there's other suggestions. I mean, you could do kind of Amazon Cloud Services.
I don't know if anybody else is struggling with this, but I think what we struggle with too is when everybody's working remotely is where do you store stuff? So, using things like Google Drive and all of that, but then when you have maybe some really hefty files, I know I'm putting a lot of things on an external hard drive because I don't have access to my work servers right now. I don't know what other organizations are doing.
We do use Google Drive. Just spent some money to get a terabyte of storage on Google Drive, and also Microsoft OneDrive as kind of cloud service things. I'm not sure that there's a magic solution. I mean, we struggle as well. Some of the files that we work with of reconstructions are like 100 gigabytes in size, so it takes 3 days or a week to upload and download it, which means that we get SD cards and put them in the post, or even drive them to share stuff.
There's some questions in the chat around fisheye lens and when you would use that, perhaps for different images. What would be, someone was asking about if it was good for detail, but someone else is saying it creates distortion, so just beware when you're using it. Do you have any opinions on that? For
shooting, for doing the shooting, yeah, I would agree. I mean, the thing is, if you're using a camera with a head, then the wider angle the lens, fisheye's obviously been, I don't know, obviously, but fisheye's been really wide angle, then the less photographs you have to take. So actually the 360 cameras where you got one on one side and another on another side, they are basically fisheye. They are fisheye lenses. That's what they're using. But the thing is that if the software that you have that you're using to process the images knows and understands the characteristics of the lens, then it can correct for that, so it doesn't become a big issue. But if you minimize the number of photographs that you use to make a 360 image, then you're cutting down on the potential resolution that you can have. I mean, fairly obviously, if you use 100 photographs to make an image, that image can be a higher resolution than if you use 4 photographs to make it. But I would say most of the time that doesn't matter. Most of the time, when you're using a camera to make a 360 photograph, you're going to be in high resolution territory compared to the kind of standard 360 cameras that are floating, that are around at the moment. So you probably want to use a reasonably wide angle lens to make your 360 photographs. Cuts down on the amount of time it takes to make the photograph. That's, but somebody already said that, doesn't it? Careful of photographs. It's true. The fisheye lens has distortions, and all lenses have distortions. Fisheye lenses have more distortions, but it does remain true. If the software understands what those distortions are, it can correct for them. And a high quality fisheye lens, it's more likely to be, if the distortions are accurate distortions, if you know what I mean, then you're okay.
Alan, how for using headsets, or if we're talking right now about sort of using things on computer or tablet or other device. So Julie's asked, how do you move from this kind of tour to where people are actually placing themselves in the picture and using, goggles or glasses or using their phone in the box? Is there anything special you need to think about, or do these platforms just transfer over?
They pretty much transfer over. So Round Me has a VR mode. So if you're put your phone in the thing and you connect to Round Me, and you're in your VR mode, then you'll be doing your VR mode. Means it creates two separate images, one for the left eye and one for the right eye. So then if you've got a headset, you're wearing a headset, that gives you the immersive feeding. I mean, there's like the numbers of degrees of freedom that you have. So that everything that we've talked about here gives you 3 degrees of freedom. Okay, now, excuse me if I make mistakes in this explanation, but I'm basically in the right ballpark. So with 3 degrees of freedom, you can look up, down, left, right. You can turn. So, but you're in the same place. You're in the same place. You're not moving around. So that's what you get with a 360 image. Okay, you're in a place, and you can see all of the way around in order to do that. And so headsets that offer 3 degrees of freedom are cheaper than headsets which offer 6 degrees of freedom. So there used to be the Oculus Go, which was produced by Oculus, which does the 3 degrees of freedom thing. You can look around, but you can't move in the environment as such. 6 degrees of freedom you get with your Quest, Oculus Quests, and the sort of other headsets, and that means you can move around and you can look around. Okay, but in order to do that, you need to have a 3D model, not just a 360 image. Now, moving from a 360 image to a 3D model is difficult. But what we do very often is move from a 3D model, and by that I mean like of a building, of a space, not of a thing. Moving from a 3D space to a 360 image has benefits, and we've done that quite a lot, and it's pretty well understood. So you can take a gaming experience and distill it into something that people can experience on any sort of, because with gaming experience you need high specification stuff. By taking the 360 images and making a virtual tour, people can access it on any phone, any computer, any tablet. Yeah, and you can use a headset. I mean, headsets come often with clickers or something like that, so you can use that to interact. So what you do is you into the 360 environment, you put action points, and people click on the action points, and then things happen. It might be moving to another photosphere, listening to something, being asked a question that you need to provide the right answer for in order to progress to the next level. You can get more and more, you can build more and more on it.
Thanks. That was very interesting. Does anybody have any other things they would like to go over? Mary's asking, any tips on producing a 360 image of an object? So I think Alan will definitely be able to talk about this. So for example, an elaborately decorated bowl inside and out.
I mean, it's something that we haven't talked about in this session, or even in this sections, or even in the set of sections, is how do you digitize 3D artifacts. And so here there's a difference between your 360 and your 3D, right? Because in the 360, you're in the middle taking photographs around, and you create a spherical thing that you're in the center of so you can look around. With an object, you move around the object, photographing it, and create a 3D model that you're outside of looking in on. So they're very different processes. What we would do here is take a 3D object and put it into a 3D scene, so you can click on it and bring the scene up as a feature. But if you wanted like a 5-minute guide to how to do 3D photogrammetry, then you've got one of the best people in the country, if not the world, to do that for you here, which is Catherine.
It's a bit much, but it is my jam. So,
So any tips on how to do 3D photogrammetry?
yeah, lots of tips. A whole lecture worth of tips. But I guess kind of where we're coming with the 360 element is that you can also do 3D capture that's accessible and using things you already have. So the entry level is not necessarily as high as you think. So same thing as with the 360, you can use your phone, you can use your regular camera through a process called photogrammetry that then you just have to then process. It's not like a laser scanner or a structured light scanner that then does the whole processing for you. There is a 2-step part of it, but it just means that there's not the added expense of buying very specific expensive equipment to do it. So, and there's different kind of specifications of which kind of objects work well, how you go about it. You can do it through regular camera on a tabletop, you can do large monuments, and then you can do buildings as well from camera, but then also aerial from a drone as well to help. But actually you can do pretty well not using a drone. You just might not get all of the roof. But yeah, that's also has accessible entry level points into digitization. So I could do a whole lecture on that.
Well, Catherine,
We'll
maybe
sort one
that's
out for you.
something we could share in the resource document. If you have anything where it's like, here's the starting point.
I do.
If you have some suggestions, I can incorporate that into our resource document. And again, this might be something that in the future, if people are really interested in this type of imaging, then maybe Catherine can do a whole thing on it.
Yeah, I have a YouTube video with step-by-step for at-home tabletop digitization, but just through the photographing process. And then we have some manuals and different things that can kind of help with the post-processing with the software a bit. It just depends on what you use, but it's kind of basic, the same basic procedures.
And if you want to make a 3D model of your build of your room, the latest iPhone is good for that. I think the iPhone, was it 12 Max or 12 Pro or whatever? It's got a
Has the LiDAR in it.
yeah, it's got a LiDAR in it, so you can, if you have one of those or know somebody who has one and can get hold of it, then that can be quite interesting in terms of making a 3D model rather than a 360 photograph of a space. And then you can, that kind of relates to tips on producing a how do you move from the kind of tour to placing people in the middle of it? You know, if you want to do the 6 degrees of freedom thing, then that's the first step in doing that. Find someone who's got the latest iPhone and borrow it off them. Oh, you might have it yourself. just
And
out of my
we've actually done it prior to iPhone having LiDAR and different things from photospheres, being able to build 3D models from photospheres. So just in case, like, you're in a building and obviously, you know, it would take time to take lots of photographs to try to do a 3D. But where if you're doing it from the photospheres, you can also, there's a process to turn it into 3D as well. So I will find that YouTube link and I'll add it into the chat.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Right. Well, unless anybody has any other questions that they want to go over at this moment, we're getting near the end of our session. So I will just say thank you very much, everybody, for joining us, and hope you enjoyed thinking around virtual tours. And as I said, all of these resources, all the things we talked about in the links, I will be sharing with you. So this will come via Eventbrite. So whatever email address you used to sign up for your place, you'll automatically get that. I'll do it as soon as I can, maybe next week, but it might be the week after. And what I've been doing is including some links to the resources from previous workshops as well. So if you didn't attend those, but now you're interested in them, you can go back and look at those resources as well and access that. So next week, we'll be doing a session on using maps to tell stories. So I will actually get a chance to talk to you all as a captive audience for a change. It's not all on Ellen's shoulders next week. So that will look at using some mapping software, but also some of the things that I've done sort of in person, and also translated that into digital for some of the projects that we've done. So it'll be really exciting to chat through that if that's the type of thing that you're interested in. Other than that, I don't think I have any other information. Thank you again. Thanks to Alan. Thanks Ian and Catherine for all of your inputs, for all of the content. And thank you everybody for coming out today.